You know, it seems like everywhere you turn these days, everyone's talking about a recession.
Yeah,
It's the word on everyone's minds.
definitely the buzzword of the moment, right?
It really is. So we wanted to do a deep dive on it, and we're looking at David Bonachia Martinez's perspective.
Yeah,
And I guess the most interesting thing is that he saw this coming.
he did.
Like, he was not surprised at all.
Yeah, a lot of people, like you said, are kind of blindsided by this, but yeah, Bonacea, he kind of saw the writing on the wall.
So what was he seeing? Like, what did he know that we didn't?
Well, he talks about this idea of like an illusion of endless growth that really kind of gripped the financial world. And so we saw all these classic red flags, right? Corporate investments were slowing down. We had the inverted yield curve, which is always a scary thing.
Right.
And credit was tightening up. But despite all that, the markets just kept chugging along.
So it's like that party where everybody's having a good time, but nobody realizes that the music's about to stop.
Exactly. Yeah. And you don't know where the exits are.
Right.
And so you had all these fund managers who were feeling this intense pressure to keep pace with the returns. Everybody wants to outperform, right?
Of course.
And to do that, they had to deplete their dry powder.
But isn't that dry powder supposed to be there when things go bad?
Exactly. And that's what makes this situation so precarious, because if the markets really tank, there's not a lot of cash on the sidelines to cushion the blow.
So it's like going into hurricane season without any plywood for your windows.
Exactly. You're completely exposed.
Right.
And he points to some pretty concerning signs out there, like the U.S. services PMI dipping into contraction territory.
Yeah, and services make up, what, like 75% of the economy?
75%, exactly.
That's huge.
It's a big deal. And, it's not just the U.S. either. France's services PMI is also looking really grim. And even retail giants like Walmart are saying that they're expecting a slowdown in consumer spending.
Yeah, if Walmart's worried, I'm worried.
Right. I mean, they're pretty plugged into what's happening with the average consumer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a little unnerving.
So if we're seeing all of these warning signs, why are people still kind of clinging to that V-shaped recovery?
Well, it is this myth that's become very pervasive that every downturn is followed by this quick and sharp rebound, that V-shaped recovery we always hear about.
Yeah.
But history actually shows us that bear markets can linger sometimes for years.
Oh, are we talking about a marathon, not a sprint?
I think that's a good way to put it, and this is where Bonacea's approach, I think, is really interesting. He prioritizes long-term stability over chasing those short-term gains. So while a lot of fund managers were laser-focused on, getting the highest returns possible, he was busy preparing for different economic scenarios, really being careful managing risk, like a good sailor, battening down the hatches, preparing for a storm.
So no bananic selling over there.
No, he's got his ship in order and he's ready for whatever comes his way. And, another point that he makes that I think is really important is understanding the economic data, specifically the difference between the PMI and the ISM surveys.
Yeah, I've seen those thrown around a lot. What's the difference?
Right. So the PMI is the Purchasing Managers Index, and that's actually a broader and more reliable gauge of the overall economy because it takes into account a wider range of companies, not just the big corporate giants.
So it's like looking at the whole forest instead of just the tallest trees.
Exactly. And the ISM, or the Institute for Supply Management Survey, is also important, but it can sometimes give you a bit of a skewed picture. It's like assuming that everyone's doing great just because a few big companies are doing well.
Right.
So yeah, there's a little more nuance there.
So when we're talking about all of this stuff, I think the most important question for our listener is, what does this mean for me?
Yeah.
Like, what can I take away from this?
I think the big takeaway here is that we really need to prepare for the possibility that this downturn could be prolonged, that it might not be a quick blip on the radar. And that preparation needs to be both financial and mental. It's not just about battening down the hatches financially, but also mentally preparing for a period of, potential uncertainty.
So how do I do that?
Well, it starts with taking a hard look at your own finances, at your investments and your risk tolerance. Are you prepared to ride out a storm that might last longer than you expect? Do you have a plan in place? And, this isn't about panicking. It's about being informed and proactive.
This has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
You've given us so much to think about.
Well, I hope it's helpful.
You've definitely given me some things to consider as I go into the weekend.
Good, good. I'm glad. And, ultimately, I think the biggest lesson we can take from Bonacea is that sometimes slow and steady wins the race.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
And to all of our listeners out there, we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See ya. Bye.